YouTube content. We're from Bessie Button. This video is called "The Part of Yu-Gi-Oh You Don't See," which, if you're the average Yu-Gi-Oh player, you'll know that it's pretty much the card text. You know that big box under the pictures? That's the one we don't see.
Card games are straightforward, right? You have a set of rules, you have a bunch of numbers, and then you have a text box with an effect that says what the card does when you play it. And Yu-Gi-Oh is no different, albeit complicated ruling nonsense. That seems simple.
Is this like an AI, generated stock video? What is this? Why is the judge hammering money?
But it's also not the full picture. See, card games, including Yu-Gi-Oh, have far more going on than meets the eye. The way cards and
Who edited this? Why is Optimus Prime in the
players interact with each other means that what's written on the card
sometimes
doesn't really express the true effect of it. And the effect far surpasses what the text, the card says. There are many such cases in Yu-Gi-Oh, and understanding them can give you a huge edge in understanding matchups, understanding metas, your own deck, and will give you a huge edge in tournaments. It's a big thing that I feel like many players don't truly appreciate when they're trying to improve with the game. And at this most recent
such
YCS
cases
in Pittsburgh, I made note of a specific interaction that hadn't really clicked for me before that ended up helping me out in my later rounds, and I felt was a good example of this principle in effect. So I felt like it'd be good to share it with you guys, so for one, you can see this one interaction to improve your own play in the current format, and hopefully see my kind of workings of a pro duelist and how I dissect situations that you could apply this to your own deck, other matchups, formats for the future, the past, wherever, and improve your gameplay across all of it. So with this in mind, after you've heard
this isn't going to boil down to activate draw, right, guys?
Similar that you've discovered through playing the game in certain matchups or decks that follow this sort of principle, because there are
Konami kind of cooking with the production, by the way.
Know all of them, so
look how much better this is.
You guys have discovered
with the YCS
as well as
streams.
if you enjoy this type of content where I try to elevate the player base and give you guys some more insight into the workings of a pro duelist, please consider liking and subscribing. It does go a long way. And I do have other content like this on the channel and on the TCG player channel, where I did a bit of a mini series with some fundamentals and more advanced stuff to get into competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, which
I thought Jesse was sponsored by TCG player. Wasn't he like tier 0 the other day?
So I played Dracotail. You know, it's been around for a few months now. I've played it for a couple of months. Most people
God, I love this deck. I can't wait till it comes to Master Duel.
This will sound like gibberish to you. I'm not going to explain all the cards here. I'm sorry, but you can go see my last deck refine.
I'm sure you all understand vaguely what Dracotail does, right, guys?
So yeah, moving on. In Dracotail, you're often going to have a chance to set a number of Dracotail traps from your deck, but you cannot always set all three. You have Dracotail Flame, Horn, and Sting. So when you're choosing to develop your disruptions, you have the choice for the Spell Negate, the Graveyard Disruption with Sting, and the Attack Position Monster Bounce with Horn. Now, Horn is oftentimes regarded as one of the weakest ones, as it's the easiest to play around. You can bounce any attack position monster, and then, yeah, it's removal, which is fine, but because it stipulates attack position only, opponents
put your link in defense.
Summon all their best monsters in defense mode. So what this means is Favor Soul and summon their guys in defense.
That's my takeaway from this.
Or if you're playing against the Canine card, same thing. They'll leave level 5s in defense mode until Lupus overlays for XYZ, which now can't be targeted. In the mirror match, something like Secretarion Dragon, the only card that removal really matters for due to its ability, you just put it in defense and no longer a problem. The only real weak spot in that strategy is if it's a Link monster. This Link monster has to be in attack mode in which Horn can be impactful. Yet in the format we find ourselves in, Link monsters really aren't that common, and the one Link that you could hit, being Snatchy, can quick synchro and kind of just makes Horn still negligible. And when you set this against the alternatives of the Spell Negate, which is really strong right now, hitting cards like Dracotail, Raho, and Kitu, hitting Branded Fusion, hitting Mitsurugi Ritual, Mitsurugi Prayers, Pre-Preparation Rites, Yummy Surprise. So yeah, when you're kind of putting those two against each other, it seems like Flame is clearly better. And even when you go against Sting, hitting the graveyard, oftentimes it may seem like Sting is better, as almost every deck does.
He hasn't really alluded to what this one principle is yet so far, has he?
Entirely graveyard centric, as the effects will trigger immediately. It still denies value off the cards like
okay, he's setting the precedent.
Value from Secretarion Dragon, off of value from Frixel, value of Arthalion add back. It means that Sting definitely can give you good and guaranteed value, where a Horn in many cases may not have that same promise. So when you're kind of presented an opportunity to set one Dracotail trap, I think it is pretty safe to go for Flame. Flame feels like far and away the best one right now. But when you're presented with an option for the second Dracotail trap, that's where things get interesting, because
Okay.
Sting is way more flexible than Horn. It can be used on way more things. It's almost always going to be live, and you can almost always get
Keep
some
your
good
disruptions
value
open-ended,
from it
noted.
besides the draw aspect. No doubt more flexible than Horn. And then you have Horn as your other option, which is easy to play around. And this kind of question happens very often in tournaments, especially if you're playing through hand traps. And I find myself wondering, what do I search? Do I search Sting or do I search Horn? Obviously, there's not one easy answer. While I think Flame is a priority, the other two, you will need to judge a little bit on a case-by-case basis which one is preferred. But originally, I may have thought that I'd lean towards Sting more, because that flexibility and guaranteed value means that it is probably the safest one in most scenarios, but it actually works against our goal. You see, whenever you're building a board and playing a deck and playing for follow-up, you need to kind of understand what you're working towards here. Dracotail can be really strong on the follow-up, because you're always going to guarantee that you have the Rahu and Kitu as follow-up, and then other Dracotails as well, and the revive effects of both Gulamel and Arthalion. And in contrast, you have a bit of a weaker end board. It's not weak, I don't want to call it weak, but comparing it to maybe, say, Yamimitsu, it's not as strong. Knowing these things is important, because it means that you know what you have to look for as you're playing out your duel. Because if I'm playing a deck with, say, bad follow-up, and my opponent's making their plays, and I'm deciding where I want to interact, I'm going to try and suffocate them. If my opponent's able to get into a grind game, and I've established my grind game isn't good, then I've probably lost. If alternatively my deck is good in the grind game, like Dracotail, then I'm more inclined to just focus on staying alive and not letting my opponent set up any super important disruptions, like in the Yummy matchup, Herald of the Arclight. If I'm able to do that, then I'm content in going into a grind game and winning from that position. Knowing how that matchup plays in that regard is the first important step to achieving the second part of this awakening. From there, I decide, okay, I'm playing versus most decks for now. I just need to make sure I stay alive, I engage in a grind game, I'll be good as the Dracotail player. Once I reach this decision, now which one becomes better, Sting or Horn? As the tournament kind of played out for me, I realized every time my opponent got all 3 trap cards set, or I got all 3 trap cards set, the card that was winning me the game when the Dracotail player went second, or losing me the game if I was a Dracotail player going second in the mirror, was that Horn. And the reason is not because it was bouncing a guy that was supposed to attack, but if I'm trying to play around the Dracotail Horn, I'm summoning all my initial monsters in defense position, which means until I resolve Urgula, at least one fusion monster with at least 3,000 attack monster is not going to be posing a threat to my opponent's life points this turn, which means they can just strictly ignore it. And if they're going for the perspective of trying to stay alive, then that Horn has already still done its job of denying the attacker, even though it hasn't bounced anything. And then obviously, while the Horn stays on the field, the longer it stays there, if you're trying to continue denying it value, denying its ability to bounce and draw, then you're giving it more value, and that your monsters have to keep going in defense mode, which will push further into a grind game. In many cases, that's really rough, because the first turn player will often have a Secretarion Dragon setup that gives them a big edge in card advantage. It's interesting because this Dracotail Horn has this implicit ability that as long as it's there and your opponent either knows it's there or expects it's there, they're going to be summoning monsters in defense mode. At least they should be. It essentially acts as a level limit area B as long as it's face down.
That's a crazy parallel.
The goal for your deck is to stay alive. A level limit area B, an attack floodgate, actually does the job pretty well. Cycling back to what trap do I set? If I have the choice of 2 traps out of the 3, and my goal is to survive, I think I'm pretty confidently going to pick the Horn from now on. This is a lot of different aspects of complex Yu-Gi-Oh coming together, where I'm building backwards from my strategy, understanding my strategy.
I like this perspective, right? You know, it's explaining that if you get into a grind games are good for reducing variance because there's more decisions to be made, more actions to be taken. Therefore, the better player should win because you have to make more meaningful decisions over the course of a longer period in time. So, level limit area B, don't sleep on it, basically.
Working towards goals in matchups, but then also understanding how cards have this extra effect onto the game state that isn't written on it. Horn does not say monsters must stay in defense mode, but that's what it does. Interestingly, knowing that this kind of exists, if I decide going second as a Dracotail player, I know Horn is there, and I decide that, say, I can't win a grind game, I'll just summon monsters in attack mode and give them the value. Because me summoning the monster in defense mode is that same thing as me just not summoning it or letting it bounce in general. And if I start summoning multiple monsters in defense mode, that's a problem, because now multiple bodies have been removed for the price of the one Horn. This obviously extends to many other fashions as well. Think back to old Yu-Gi-Oh! How Gores was such a big payoff that it meant your opponent didn't attack if that card really existed. The fact that cards exist and are powerful, and the fact that you can also play around them, also leaves.
Is there any other examples of this?
Things to spiral in a way where playing around them is an edge within itself and provides this other effect into the game. And that's why I refer to Yu-Gi-Oh! Metagame and such often as this economy ecosystem and just the living thing almost, because there's so many things at play that it can be hard to understand.
I guess that, like, in theory, that's what the charmies are supposed to do, right? Force you into different lines and plays. Even though you might not necessarily give your opponent like 3 draws with Fuwa, or any draws. You can give your opponent 0 draws with Fuwa, but it forces you to a weaker board, right?
Very similar. Now, one other thing I want to discuss that also happened to Weiss Pittsburgh, it's a little different. It's not the same as the
evenly. I don't think anyone really plays around evenly anymore, do they?
More so touching on information.
That's one of the other Omni, you know, that's how you play around evenly.
Information to your opponent. It's important that when you're making plays, you have a reason behind all of it, and everything you do does have a direct impact on the opponents, right? The Dracotail horn does far more than just
torrential mirror force in old Yu-Gi-Oh. A lot of these principles are very important in old Yu-Gi-Oh!
What I noticed was I've been doing something to build a habit. When I've been summoning Arthalion, in most cases with Dracotail, I've been summoning it in the extra monster zone. Why do I do that? I don't play Hermetic Seal for one, so it's not really a risk of denying that option for me to do that. But what it does do is it means that if my opponent has IP Masquerade on the field, they can link summon for Gorgon and negate it depending on where I summon the lion. But if I summon it in the extra monster zone,
oh my god, have people been playing Gorgon in TCG?
Into the main monster zone against Gorgon or into an IP.
That's crazy. For anyone who doesn't know what Gorgon is, it's this new link that like points to 3 zones and your opponent gets like negated on them or something. That's very funny. I'm glad that card is seeing play. I always thought that was going to be good.
It's like one of the worst things you can do. It's a huge blunder. And by making
is it really better than SP?
And forcing myself to learn that habit, I'm avoiding that. Now, obviously, my opponent does not have an IP Masquerade on the field. This play is pointless. But from my perspective at first, I was like, I'll train myself on this habit. That way I don't make a blunder during the tournament. There's not really a downside for me to do it. I just make cross sheep anyways instead of seals. And yeah, you can see the combos I do in my deck profile. Keep in mind what I said earlier. I said I don't play Hermetic Seal. My opponent doesn't know that. So by me summoning Arthalion into the extra monster zone, on my turn 1, when they have no way of it ever being impactful, I'm now conveying information to my opponent. I may not play Hermetic Seal, as well as it's clear, at least in this specific position, I have 0 intent of making it, which gives away information. For one, if you're playing a Yummy deck or Mitsurugi deck, you might be scared of a Kawakimirror Draco. It's decently popular in enough Dracotail decks that you warrant playing around it. So some interactions like Ash might be held in your hand for Hermetic Seal to deny that Draco from happening. That's, again, kind of backward solving logic of you see the problem being the Draco and you play to beat the problem. You identify your deck's weaknesses. And that's good on the Yummy and the Mitsu player. But I'm giving my opponents free information there and free ability to change
it's pretty
in a more beneficial way.
Normal, I think, for a lot of people to instantly use the EMZ in non-link decks, thinking it's just a good way to save space. But
so while it is good that I've been training myself, this habit
you are just giving information, I guess, like he says.
I need to be sure I'm doing it only in the particular spot.
I guess if you don't need the space, it's unnecessary to do that play.
Weird adverse effect of giving away information from opponents that very well might be impacting the game, even if only a little bit. It can. It's incredible how this level of mind game and playing around things does exist within Yu-Gi-Oh! Because people say it's just a solitaire game. It is not. The micro interactions and decisions within the game are still entirely there. It's what makes the distinction between the best players and the players who just learned their deck and their combos. And as I continue to try and improve myself, and sometimes I have to relearn some of these concepts, it's important that I pay attention to this stuff and always just try and get better. It's important to look out for the stuff as you're playing, because even though I wasn't disappointed with my performance or my play,
well,
at
this video is highlighting the lines in between the lines.
It's still interesting that
I think this would do well with practical examples, right? Some video like this,
get lost in
like an actual, highlight of like a turn being played out. Seeing it physically in action, I think would be interesting.
Eyes up to see that maybe I'm making mistakes that I haven't seen, because after all, right, it's very possible.
Because I don't think there's ever been a lot of videos done in Yu-Gi-Oh! In Yu-Gi tubing.
You just wouldn't
analyzing like
mistake.
literally
And
like
a big
one
part
turn.
of getting better is trying to have this openness
Out of
to
characters, I
these new
think did like a really
concepts
good
to see
one
what you have to improve.
on like
And it's a big
Herman's Master
thing
Duel like
that,
replay
again,
with Snake
I do
Eye.
as I approach every
Like,
new
there's some
tournament.
good
So I'll
ones
do it
out there.
even during the tournament too, right? Because
I think
these
that,
things were things I immediately changed in my
what was his
play
name? Sai?
after I noticed them.
He's like a
during the
Counter-Strike
YCS.
content
I think I
creator
noticed
now.
The Dracotail horn
Which
thing
is
around
crazy.
7 or 8 at the YCS.
He
It was
did a
around
couple of those,
12
which was
when
cool.
My opponent actually pointed out to me the mistake with Arthur Lyon as they said, "Oh, so you don't play seals?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. I did kind of
that's the one,
I
yeah.
encourage you guys to really take these concepts to the next step. Let me know how you apply these in your own games. If you notice anything
He's a
else
Sai
yourself,
op,
and
yeah.
of course, be respectful in the comments to each other because
Transferable skills between Yu-Gi-Oh and Counter-Strike.
Share some more stories with you guys, more interactions with myself, and replies to your own.
We
With
should
that
make
said,
a video
make
like
sure to
that.
Like, subscribe,
I used to do like
and
some
I'll see you
replay
guys next
highlights,
time.
but they weren't like super popular. I only really did them if I was like super confident. What's the word? Super. What's the word I'm looking for? Like into a deck or something. Oh my god, Jesse has so many patrons. Based. God damn. All right, that was a good video. Slightly too long for my liking. I think a lot of that was kind of repeating, but there's just like a masterclass of requirements for getting into like the good to bet insane player like stage. You know, there's like a level that you crack at some point. I've never cracked it, but these are the concepts and principles that help you get there. So it is cool that there's some videos on this. He should make like a playlist or something, but yeah, good stuff.